Well, this little video is about time. Time. So if you don't know how to look at the clock and figure out what time it is, I'm hoping that within a few days you will know how to look at the clock and tell what time it is. It's a great skill to have. You really want to know how to do this. I guess the first thing to learn is that there are two kinds of clocks. Number one, the digital. Number two, analog. Digital, analog. Now, which one do you think is easier to learn how to read? Well, the digital clock, of course. Even my dog can tell time if he's looking at a digital clock. So you see the green check mark? That's just about the only thing you need to learn on a digital clock. You see the pink little light, and then you see the orange one that I drew under it? Well, if it's nighttime, the pink light is on. And then if it's daytime, where I put the orange dot, there's a pink light there that turns on if it's daytime. Because right now the digital clock says 7:13, 13 minutes after 7. Well, we don't know if that's in the morning or in the evening. So the little pink light tells us that that is 13 minutes after 7 in the evening. Okay, that's pretty easy. That's why I said my dog could tell time off a digital clock. So let's look at the analog clock. It's also very simple, but there are a few little tricks to learn because your mind has to work a little bit harder to figure out the time on an analog clock. Notice, number 2, the analog clock. It's telling me that that's about 16 minutes after 7. It's not telling me if it's in the morning or in the evening. So I think that's why most people are using digital clocks at home these days. They're just easier to read. But on the other hand, most people, if they say, oh, it's 16 minutes after 7, they probably know if it's the morning and they just got up. And they probably know if it's the evening and they've had dinner. So I don't know how much you really need that little pink dot. Oh, well, let's move on. Let's learn about the analog clocks. Let's look at the white clock on this page, the white clock with the big black numbers. Now, that white clock has 3 hands. They call them hands. Okay, so the short, fat one measures the hours that pass. The long, thin one measures the minutes. And then that super skinny one measures the seconds. Well, in first grade, we don't worry about the seconds, okay? So we are going to focus on what the hours and the minutes tell us. So now let's look at the clock in the middle of this page. Here's some information already here for us. I put the hands, the arrows, on the face of the clock. So the front of the clock, the circular part, is called the face, and the red and the blue arrows are called the hands. Okay, so the hour hand, you can see that it's shorter and fatter. It's red, and the hand that measures minutes is blue on this clock, and it's longer and thinner. So no matter what the colors are, you can always know the hour hand is shorter and fatter, and the minute hand is longer and skinnier. So now let's look. The red hand is pointing to the 7. And if you notice the big number 7, there are other numbers like that all around the clock. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And if the red hand is measuring hours, I think we can agree that there are 12 hours showing on this clock. Let's look over at the blue hand. It's pointing toward one of those little marks that go all the way around the clock in between the big numbers. And each one of those little marks is 1 minute. So between the big number 3 and the big number 4, there are 5 minutes. Okay, so if there are 12 numbers on the clock, there should be 60 little marks total all the way around the clock. All the way around the clock. 60 little marks. And the blue hand moves around the face of the clock, counting off those minutes, while the red hand moves around the face of the clock, counting off the hours. Notice at the top of this clock, there's 2 arrows I put to show you what direction both hands move in. They only go in one direction. Okay? So I'm showing you this clock because I really, really want you to understand that the long, skinny hand is measuring minutes, right? And I want to prove that there are 60 little marks around the face of this clock. So if you move the long hand from the 12 to the 1, and you count off those little marks, you've gone 5 minutes. You see the orange 5? So keep going between the big number 1 and the big number 2. You measured 5 more minutes. So you've gone from 5 minutes to 10 minutes at the big number 2. You go another 5 minutes, skip counting by 5, 5, 10, 15. You've gone 15 minutes around the face of the clock, and that matches up to the big number 3. And you keep going like this. Let's look down at the big number 6 at the bottom of the clock. So when the minute hand has gone around and it's pointing to the big number 6, it's counted off 30 little marks, 30 minutes. And then let's move up to the big number 9 on the clock. How many minutes have passed by when the minute hand points to the 9? Well, 45 minutes have passed. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. 45 minutes have passed when the long, skinny hand points to the 9. Let's keep moving up. 45, 50, 55, 60. So when the long, skinny hand has gone one trip all around the face of the clock, starting at 12, going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and it comes back to 12 again, that long, thin hand has counted off 60 minutes, because that's its job, is to count the minutes. Okay, so I hope I've proven to you that there are 60 minutes showing on the face of the clock, and how many hours? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So the short, fat hand is counting the 12 hours, and the long, thin hand is counting off the 60 minutes. Well, that's just great, except there's one little problem. There are not 12 hours in a day. There are 24 hours in a day. But I only see numbers 1 through 12. So how do you think they solved this problem? There don't appear to be enough numbers for 24 hours. So here's how we solved that problem. The short, fat hand on this clock, it's red. that short fat hand is going to have to count the hours off 2 times in one day. So in 24 hours, one day, the short fat hand points at the numbers around the face of the clock 2 times. It makes 2 trips around the face of the clock in one day because 12 plus 12 equal 24. That's how we measure the 24 hours. The short fat hand, in this clock it's the red hand, is pointing to the big number 6. So that means it's 6 o'clock. But we don't know if it's 6 in the morning or 6 in the evening. We just know that it's pointing to the 6. I guess if you look out the window, you can tell if it's 6 in the morning or 6 in the evening. Remember, the digital clock had that little pink light that would light up in one place if it was nighttime and below it if it was daytime. So with these analog clocks, I guess you just have to look out the window to know. Is it 6 in the morning or 6 in the evening? And here the short fat hand is pointing to the number 8. So it's 8 o'clock. It's either 8 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock at night. And here that same hand is pointing at 10. So is it 10 in the morning, 10 o'clock recess? Or is it 10 o'clock at night when everyone's asleep? And now the hour hand has made one trip all the way around the face of the clock. It's counted out 12 hours. So that's the first half of the day. And now it's going to make one more trip all the way around the face of the clock. That will be another 12 hours. So at that point, it has counted out one full day, 24 hours. So this shorter, fatter hour hand touches each of the 12 numbers 2 times in one whole day. Now we have a special name that we give when the hour hand touches the 12. Number 1, called midnight, and we're asleep. Then when it goes around and it touches the 12 again, it's 12 noon, and you're eating lunch. So those are special names we give when the hour hand points to the 12 each time, 2 times in one day. I know that this can be a little confusing, so let's do this. Let's take the numbers, the big numbers on the face of the clock, 1 through 12, and let's create 2 number lines. And this is how it would probably look. So you can see the moon at the top of the page, and let's call that midnight, 12 o'clock midnight. And the clock underneath the number line shows that the fat hour hand is pointing to 12. And then look at what happens. Time moves on. It goes from being dark, nighttime, and the sun comes up. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, depending upon what time of year it is, spring, summer, fall, winter. By 6 o'clock, the sun is up, and you can see the clock face underneath the number line. The hour hand is pointing to 6. And keep going. 7 o'clock, maybe by 7 o'clock in the morning, you're waking up, getting ready for school. 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, first recess, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and then the fat hour hand points to the 12 again. And it's noon, it's lunchtime, lunch and lunch recess. So look, this is the second time that the hour hand points to 12. First, it pointed to 12 at midnight. Now it points to 12 again at noon. And keep counting the hours in the day. You'll see there's another 12 hours before that hour hand points to midnight again. So 1 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe it's library time, 2 o'clock, by 3 o'clock, school is finished, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, maybe that's when you have dinner, and you can see the clock face under the number line. The hour hand is pointing to 6 again. And you keep going, 7, 8, 9. By 9 o'clock, maybe you're in bed and sleeping, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. And that next 12 o'clock is midnight again. So this is one way to understand that there are two 12-hour periods during one whole day. 12 plus 12 equals 24. So there are 24 hours in one whole day. You may not know that because for about 8 of those hours you're asleep. But there are 24 hours in one whole day. And you can see it here on the number line. On this page, I put a few more labels on. You can see the first 12 hours from midnight to noon, plus the next 12 hours from noon to the next midnight. 12 plus 12 equal 24, 24 hours in the day. Okay, on this page, see the big A period, M period, and the capital P period, M period? Well, those are abbreviations. And in the morning, the A and the M stand for ante meridiem, which in Latin means before midday. And then look over at the capital P and the M. That's an abbreviation for post meridiem. In Latin, that means after midday. So remember how we already observed that when the hour hand is moving around the face of the clock 2 times, it's pointing to each number 2 times. So in the morning, if you write out the time, you would, let's say you get up at 6 in the morning. So you would write 6 a.m. That's how the person would know you're talking about 6 in the morning. So let's say you are talking about when you have dinner and you write 6 p.m., the p.m. That's how the person knows you're talking about 6 in the evening, after midday. So what is midday? Well, 12 o'clock noon is midday. So anytime you write before noon, you label it a.m. And anytime you're writing afternoon, you use p.m. And that's when you're writing and reading, that's how we know if you're talking about the morning, 6 o'clock, or the evening, 6 o'clock. And on this page, I put a few more labels, vocabulary words to show you the different times of the day and how we name them. So A, midnight, those hours between about 3 and 5 o'clock in the morning, we call those the early morning. And then C, the late morning. And then D, of course, 12 o'clock noon. E is the early afternoon. F is the late afternoon time. G is the evening. And then, of course, it goes into nighttime. At this point, if you believe that you understand how there are 24 hours in one day and how the hour hand points to each of the 12 numbers on the clock 2 times in 24 hours, and you understand morning, afternoon, a.m., p.m., you can stop watching now. If you would like a little bit more information about what happens during a full day, you may keep watching. You might find it interesting. It's up to you. I think by now, at this point in the video, I've told you all of the information, and the next few minutes just gives you a little bit more detail about the different times of the day. Let's see what a 24-hour day looks like. We'll start at the number 12. It is midnight. 1 minute later, we start a new day. The next hour is 1 o'clock in the morning. We write that as 1:00 a.m. a.m. And we're asleep. And the hour hand moves to the 2. It is 2 a.m. Most of us are still asleep. And the hour hand, the short fat hand, points to the 3. 3 a.m. We're asleep. The hour hand moves another hour to the 4. Now it's 4 a.m. We're still asleep. The hour hand moves to the 5. 5 a.m. We're still asleep. It's in the morning, very early morning. Now the hour hand moves to the 6. It's pointing to the 6. It's 6 a.m. Maybe some of us need to get up at 6, but some of us are probably still asleep. And then the short fat hand points to the 7. 7 o'clock in the morning. I bet most of us are awake by then. Then the short fat hand moves and points to the 8. Another hour passes. It points to the 8. 8 a.m. Bet you're on your way to school. And then the hour moves to the 9. 1 more hour, and it's 9 o'clock in the morning. 9 a.m. Everyone's at school. Then the hour hand moves 1 more time. Another hour passes. It is 10 a.m. 10 o'clock in the morning, and it is time for recess. And then another hour passes. 11 a.m. 11 o'clock in the morning. We're back in the classroom. We're at school. Now the hour hand moves to the next hour, which is 12. Well, it's not midnight. No, let's take a look at what time it is. So when the hour hand is pointing straight up at the 12, it is noon, 12 o'clock noon, and you are eating lunch and having lunch recess. Then the hour hand moves another hour to 1. It's 1 p.m. p.m. for afternoon. Anytime after 12 noon up to midnight is p.m. So 1 o'clock p.m., oh, maybe it's library day and we go to the library at 1. The hour hand moves 1 more hour, 2 p.m., 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, we might go out for some PE. And then by the time the hour hand moves to 3, it's 3 o'clock, and you're either in the after-school program or you've gone home. And maybe at 4 o'clock, when the hour hand points to the 4, you're doing homework. And you do homework for an hour until the hour hand points to the 5. 5 p.m. Maybe you're taking some time to play, or you're helping around the house, getting things ready for dinner. And then at 6 p.m., maybe that's the time you have dinner. The hour hand has moved and it's pointing to the 6, and it's dinner time. So the hour hand is pointing at the 6 p.m. in the evening, time for dinner. And you eat dinner, and then when the hand has moved to the 7 p.m., maybe you're helping clean up the dinner, or maybe you're playing, or maybe you're doing homework again for another hour, and then the hour hand moves to the 8 p.m., 8 in the evening. Maybe that's your time to have a bath time. And then you fool around for another hour, and it's 9 p.m. And mom and dad tell you, oh, it's time for you to go to bed. Get in bed. 9 o'clock, bedtime. And then the hand moves another hour, 10 p.m. You're asleep. Well, I hope you're asleep. And then the hour hand moves another hour. It points to the 11. And you're sleeping. And it moves again and it points to the 12. That's midnight. Midnight in the nighttime. And when it moves one more time, it starts a new day. It starts a new day. So that's how that works. The hour hand goes around the face of the clock 2 times.